Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is BeanTurtle as always, and today I want to talk to y'all about survivability against radar missiles, survivability against AIM 120s, R-77s, or the quote FOX-3s, the NATO designation for them, as well as infrared missiles, so that while you're grinding these marks of distinction, you can do that without ripping your hair out as much. So today, first I want to talk about real quick, they just added this in today, the Tornado IDS, or any of the tornadoes really. You can use any of those to get this decal for the anniversary of the first flight. For that, you can also get the Russian Air Force one for one more day ending today. What we're going to be talking about, of course, we've got three types of missiles. We've got infrared missiles, such as the AIM-9L, AIM-9M, and the R-73s, R-60s, and that sort of thing. We're going to be talking about radar missiles, but the radar missiles that you have to lock your radar on, so like the AIM-7Ms, AIM-7Es, etc., and then also the AMRAAMs and the R-73 or R-77s, which are the semi-active, the ones that have their own radars. Some basic survival techniques for all these that you can learn. It's more of a practice thing. Unfortunately, there's no like win button. You can't just flare a lot of these things. There are things that you have to do to survive. Good news is, though, the things that are really hard to survive, like the close range infrared missile fire, you don't see those at top tier as much anymore. And at lower tiers, such as with the Tornado IDS WTD-61, very short, convenient name, usually you can flare those pretty easily, the IR missiles that are coming at you. It's not as hard to deal with IR missiles, but usually the best solution for you if you see someone fire an IR missile at you is to flare a little bit and turn your plane away from it as best you can. Cut your afterburner to make it a little bit less bright, because usually the missile is looking for the brightest thing. Is it this, or is it your flares? You want it to be the flares, of course, so you don't get bonked. Top tier missiles, though, AIM-9Ms and stuff like that, it's a little bit harder because these things have a thing called IRCCM, which is infrared countermeasure. Very creative, Oscar-worthy name. And what an IRCCM missile does is it will, in this case, turn off its seeker head when it sees a flare. So it actually knows the difference between you and the flare. So what you have to do is fly away from the missile while you're flaring, so that the AIM-9M does not know where it is. Otherwise, it'll just fly right into you. And sometimes, despite everything you do, you will still get hit, is kind of what I've noticed. But I would not worry about those as much. What you guys should worry about, and what I will show you guys in clips, is the active radar missiles and like the semi-actives and such, which are going to track into you as much as possible. So we will start with that. So the first thing that I will mention, and the reason I'm at the testing zone here for US planes, the training area, is because there is a SAM that will be tracking you constantly, a radar SAM, or it will be trying to anyway. I'm a little out of its radar range. But the first thing that you can do to kind of reliably protect yourself against any radar missiles as well as AIM-120s is when you see it tracking you, and it's not consistent, of course, but you can turn. This is called notching. And when you put your plane at a 90-degree angle, approximately, to the SAM radar or the plane radar, it acts as if you don't exist because it's clearing you out as if it thinks you're the ground. It's complicated. If you want the more specific how that works, go look up a radar guide, etc. The DCS players that are crazy, they know what they're talking about with that stuff. But it's one way to survive these things is to go 90 degrees to these radar missiles. As you can see, he's having a really hard time locking me up. And that AI bot is only supposed to lock you, right? So he's having a really rough time keeping me locked when I'm notched to him. This works with the radar missiles too, because what happens is it starts to lose you. It really starts to lose you in the clutter. And what else can you do? Since AIM-120s don't really care about your feelings, they will still track you even while you're notching a little bit. So what you can do is, while you're flying away, add some chaff out behind. I have both flares and chaffs, so that's why you see both. And likely the missile will lose you. he can still keep me locked because I'm not perfectly notched to him, but the chaff is confusing his radar a lot. It's like moving around like crazy and stuff. All right, this next clip is from an actual game I've played recently. I don't have audio because I had something playing in the background. So I fired off a couple of AIM 120s, waited for their radar to lock onto the target, and then I pulled off because of the missiles coming at me. So when I did this here, first of all, I'm starting to notch the radars of the missiles as well as the radars of the planes that are looking at me, making it harder for them to lock onto me. I sent some chaff out to see if it would throw it off the target a little bit, maybe even waste some of the plane's energy. And then I did something called going cold, which is when you turn away from the missile. And so when you turn away from the missile, it's burning its energy a little bit more, and so the missile is going to have a harder time getting to you if you're pulling off away from it. And sometimes when you chaff like this, the missile will just completely get lost onto your chaff when you do this. I wouldn't recommend with radar missiles ever just notching. You have to do something else. You have to turn away from the missiles and such. As you can see, that missile that is still tracking my RWR is still looking at me. So that missile will hit me if I'm not careful, even though it's not as much of a threat as it was before. So once I feel that it's probably safe, I turn back around and I come back to hit some other people. But if you noticed also, um, that missile, it took even for me to turn around for that missile to stop looking at me. So they will track you mercilessly. Like they do not care. This next clip from the same game actually is another thing that you can do to survive missiles in different conditions, such as, for instance, head-ons and from behind, that sort of thing. That missile right there, for instance, comes from like an Su-27, I think it was. I didn't know if it was a radar missile or not. Sometimes Russian missiles have a bit of magic where they'll just like not radar lock you at all and they'll still hit you. So sometimes it's better to be more safe than sorry. And I pulled really hard to the right and went down to the ground to attempt to keep that from hitting me. Um, I'm also checking my RWR, seeing that an F-16 is consistently pinging me. I almost got an ace this game. It was pretty close. This time I actually did not know where the missile was coming from. Again, sorry, no audio because I was listening to very copyrighted music. But an F-15 somewhere in front threw a AIM 120 at me, and I didn't really know where it was from, so I just turned and went cold and flew away as fast as I could. Now, something important to know about this clip in particular, or at least that you can see in this clip, is that for a second the RWR ping actually turned off while I was still making that hard turn to the right. That is because directly above and directly below your plane, you actually do not get any radar pings or radar warning pings. That is because there's a dead zone both above and below. So sometimes you can use that dead zone as a way to know you're actually in the notch, sort of, I guess is a way to look at it. But usually I find it a little concerning because it's like I'd rather know that I'm being shot at the whole time. But it is a good indicator to know that you have made it almost all the way around to where you're a little bit safer. And as you can see, I flipped around, fell out, and was out of the ground, or fell out of the sky a little bit, and was able to get away from the missiles. Now I could go beat up on this poor JAS-39 who is fighting like 8 people at once. And as you can see, my missile found his poor soul. This clip is actually the example, but in reverse. The enemy plane is going to be doing exactly what I'm talking about, and very well, actually, to my dismay, as I try to take him out. So as I fire my AIM 120 there, the missile, the lock happens immediately, so it's already targeting the thing. It's going right at him. He immediately turns very, very hard 90 degrees to the missile, and as you can see on the radar screen, it misses. It pulls way off away from him, probably after some chaff. You can see the black dot in the middle of my screen, whereas the radar was trying to hit him before, right? He is doing what I'm talking about perfectly, and it is very hard to hit a target who is doing that. I then am fired at by someone else, have some weird problems with the controls, but I am also able to pull off making that missile miss me as well. Same thing, just in practice in different ways. So the next example I'm going to talk about is kind of a weird one. These are the normal missiles that require a radar lock to actually lock onto things. But the first thing I'm going to show you is actually me flying towards an enemy base because the F5 was using the base as cover, which is not a cool thing to do, and so I get shot at by a bunch of Roland Sams. Those are terrifying, by the way. However, these radar missiles work very similarly to the radar missiles that planes will be launching at you. So, if you see the missiles are coming right at me, if you fly really low and kind of turn to the sides, they will usually fly past you because radars have a hard time seeing right against the ground. They kind of lose you in the ground, if you get what I'm saying. So, kind of a weird example, but it works. This example right here is from a much older video. I'm in a dogfight with a few fighters with some allied support. That F-15J throws a missile at me. What I do immediately, knowing it's a radar missile, is I fly towards the mountain, but also not like into it, obviously. And I fire off some flares and chaff, and that is enough to actually get it to miss. He then tries, I think, to fire another one at me, and he and I both miss our, I guess, gunshot and stuff. But then I also get annihilated by a different guy, actually. But the idea there is that there are multiple ways to dodge AIM-7s and that sort of missile. You can, one, turn really hard away from the missile, or and create some Gs, or you can actually run it into the ground. They do not like the ground. Here's another example of that in practice. This is a very old clip, so no AIM-120s or anything in the game. I fire a missile at that guy, but that F-4EJ throws a radar missile at me. I actually make a mistake here by going high. I could have died if it was a better missile, but what I should have done was stayed really low to the ground, and I still dodged it regardless. I also get fired at again here by, I think, that Su-27 missile locks onto me, and I pull some Gs there to get that one out of the way. So there are multiple ways to dodge these things, but now, of course, I am in immense danger in this clip, as you can tell. I don't actually know if that's a radar missile or a IR because I can't tell. Remember the dead spots on the top and the bottom of the plane make it to where it's a little difficult to know sometimes what is actually coming at you. It's just another example of how to dodge radar missiles. It's not really that hard to do if you know what you're doing with those missiles. As I said, the FOX-3s are a little harder. But next, let's move on to IR missiles. So when we're talking about IR missiles, we of course want to think about what type of IR missiles we're playing with. Are we playing with the AIM-9Ms and the R-73s, or are we talking about little things like the AIM-9Bs, which can be dodged by accident, or the AIM-9L, which is not, impossible to, or not completely flareable, but it's really hard to not get flared. It really depends what we're talking about. Because you can see that poor MiG-23, he flared a lot, and yet nothing he did mattered. He still got hit by the missile because he didn't really do everything he needed to do, such as turn away from the missile and flare more in the envelope and such. Again, this is another one of those. It's more complicated than that thing, and I don't really know how to describe it. So if you want a guide on how infrared countermeasure IRCCM missiles work, I would go recommend you look at like a guide from like Defin or a DCS gamer guide, etc. Because they know the physics of how this works, and War Thunder is based on real, actual like mechanics of real life stuff. So I would go look and defer to them. But if you're not playing at absolute top tier, as in like 13.7, 13.0, it's crazy it's that high, but yeah, it is like 13.0, 13.7, you're not going to ever see these AIM-9Ms, more than likely. So what you're going to see more of are going to be the more easily flared IR missiles. It's pretty easy to get rid of them. As you see, I'm in my tornado here. Guy throws an IR missile at him. I just click the flare button once, which I have bound to N on my keyboard, and it goes away. It's pretty easy to deal with. Sometimes you don't even need to cut your burners. Sometimes I do, just in case. But it's pretty easy to deal with. And one last little thing I'll mention for today, they actually buffed the Tornado IDS. I didn't actually know this at the time of when I made my guide originally. However, now that they have changed how the flares work. So they have large caliber countermeasures times 300 or 56 large caliber countermeasures. That's these countermeasure pods on the side. And you don't get countermeasures unless you equip them, so do it. But they actually have the pools split. They give you 340 chaff per pod by default. And so you don't even need to select chaff anymore when you're actually putting your chaff belts on. You take full flares and then you'll get the chaff anyway. So this way you get double the flare pops and a huge number of anti-radar pops at the same time. So it's like a direct buff to this plane, making it much more easy to use at 11.3, which is a really high BR. So remember, you can do that. Pretty great. I recommend doing that. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hope this was helpful. This is part of, if you've made it this far, a guide series that I am making, where I'm essentially making a guide to everything. Because I enjoy doing that. I enjoy passing off what knowledge I have to other humans. If you wish to see more of my videos, or you want to see for instance, my Tornado IDS review, you guys can find that on my channel. And my video on weak spots will be in the top right corner of the screen if you are interested in that. They're common World War II tanks and stuff that you may not know quite how to deal with. Well, I am going to help you out with that in the video right there. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and have a great day.